Nuno Da Silva. Super happy to have you here. And we are receiving Eva back on the room in this moment. Nuno has been together with Eva creating the Summit of Conflict Transformation some years ago. And I leave it to you, Eva, to share what was that experience and for the rest of the presentation.
Yes, so yeah, really nice to see you all. Thank you for joining. And yeah, as Anaí may well have said, this is a series that we kind of came to through actually through creating illustrations to try to make resources that were online around conflict and kind of good transformative conflict process that weren't getting accessed to try to make those more accessible. And then we started talking to the people who developed the resources and thought, wow, these people have got so much to share. Let's do some webinars. So here we are. And Nuno is going to be talking to us about his work on a regenerative approach to human conflicts. And the reason that we invited Nuno was because we wanted to flag the resource of the Coming Down to Earth Summit website, which is an absolutely extraordinary resource. I still, after, 5 years after that event happened, I have never seen anything like it. I don't know of any other resource online that has over 30 in-depth interviews with people who have put their life's work into different approaches to conflict. And Nuno was really the powerhouse behind that whole thing. He's kind of connected with people from all different backgrounds. And he and Ben from What Next? Now What?
Now What?
Yeah, conducted the interviews. And it was really, it was quite something. Right at the beginning of certainly of my experience of online webinars. So it's a huge pleasure to welcome you and really looking forward to hearing what you've got to share with us, Nuno. Please take it away.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you so much. I missed a lot our times working together for that summit, which ended up happening in the beginning of the COVID of the pandemics. It was in June 2020. But we've been working on it since 2018, sensing into what was that the transition movement needed, and we ended up building that as a starting point for this work. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm talking to you from the south of Portugal. My name is Nuno, and one of the things that the summit really, I think, tried to work a lot and ground people in was a different way of thinking about conflict, because our usual approach is to see conflict as something bad, a problem, and so we try to develop all sorts of strategies to avoid it, to flee from it, and not really working to see that tensions and conflicts are a call from some part of a system to have attention, to be paid attention to, and something to learn with and evolve from. So that's been a big shift. And from that work, at the time I was organizing the summit, I started working with regenerative development. I did a course in the first semester of 2020 together with Grant, who's here in the call with us. Hi, Grant. And I decided to do the rest of my life to work in that practice. And I want to share today some insights I got from the way regenerative development, which is in a way, it's living systems thinking, is an approach to work with human, social, political, economical issues with the living systems lenses, with trying to understand how life works. And I've learned a lot of things, and I wanted to share with you some insights today. But before we go into that, I would like to invite us all to individually just have a moment to see, to lean in on the topic of today. And I would like to invite you to hold in mind the work you've been doing with transition, or if you are not really involved in a transition local initiative, you might consider another collective project or initiative that you are involved in that that is trying to generate some sort of effect in society, and that has, and think about what are frequently the kind of conflicts that you see happening in that space, both inside and also in the relationship of that collective with the surrounding stakeholders, other forces in your context that are part of the system you are trying to affect and improve. And just for a couple of minutes, hold that context in mind and write down on the chat box, insights on the nature of conflicts that you are observing happening there. What's happening? What kind of conflicts are happening? What are the challenges you are feeling there, both in terms of inner conflicts in the group and in the individuals, but also outer conflicts with other stakeholders around, just to get us started. And so choose just one initiative, you don't have to choose a big thing, but it's important you hold something concrete in mind. So, it's interesting that there's usually, we are our worst enemies in a way, because most of the challenges groups face is between the members of the group, right? Although there's also someone mentioning they're sometimes looking, and that can be inside on outside, on this perceiving others as a threat instead of potential collaborator and partner in the work. But thank you for sharing that. I just wanted us to kind of sink in, and as I'm going through the conversation today, because what I wanted to work with you is share with you a couple of insights I've been having and that are related with a way of looking at life, the way life works. So trying to be aligned with the way life has been evolving in the planet for the last 6 billion years. And then we'll do an exercise and have a bit of conversation, and I'll finish today with a case study for us to have a look at. So I'm sorry if I'm going to be speaking for a while, but it's important, this starting point, that you are able to hold the concrete situations you are involved with and try to see, instead of getting caught on this very conceptual conversation, that we are able to land some of the things I'm bringing in your concrete cases, okay? And I'm going to start to share the screen so we can. Okay, so I'll be starting by exploring a bit what this means, a living systems perspective on human conflicts, right? And we'll tackle some of the things you mentioned now in the chat as we go along. So first thing is an invitation. Please do not reject anything I'm going to say today without testing it against your own experience. And also do not accept anything without testing with your own experience. So hold your open mind. If you feel that I'm going to say something that disturbs you, that you feel, oh, I'm not agreeing with this doesn't make any sense, I invite you to try to hold that a bit, suspend that thought a bit in yourself if you can, and still be in some sort of open curiosity, and try to then test out some of the things I'm going to say in your own, in your own daily life to see, because it might be that I'm going to share something that could offer you another way of looking at things that is not what you are used to. All right. So, the first problem we face, and was the thing we were trying to tackle in the summit, was that we usually try to shift the way we do things, like methods, and we think, okay, this method of addressing a conflict doesn't work, let me try another method. So it just changed the how we do things, or we might change the theme. But if we are not able to change the way to pay attention to the way we think and look at it and scrutinize it, we are not really able to change the nature of things and change the way we are working. And so one of the issues with conflicts is, if we continue to have this narrative that conflicts are bad and we need to avoid them all the time, or flee from them, or win them, then we are not really able to find another possibility for us in the groups to deal with conflicts in a much more healthy and generative way. And we'll see that one of the problems is that we really, the way the world, the major problems in the world are a result of the difference between how nature works and how we think. So we need to really scrutinize how we think. And I just want to share you this levels of paradigm framework, because this really helps us to see this, in very concrete terms. We could say, like, if we start from the lower part, that most of the problems we face today are a result of the way we've been thinking about our relationship with each other and with the planet, because most of the behaviors today come from an extractive mindset, extracting value from places, from natural resources, extracting value from people, human resources. So if that person doesn't give the value I want, I just change that person with another one. And we've been all seeing the results of that kind of mindset. And we are, none of us is free from it, because we grow up in this. So we really need to pay attention to in which places of our life we might be approaching certain situation with an extractive mindset, because that happens. And sorry about that. Yeah, and then what we see now also is a lot of forces moving in us and other people around that is about arresting disorder or stop doing harm, do no harm, So you have all these things about limiting policies to limit the damage that companies and our own behavior can have with the ecosystems. But you also have that in the energy people are putting in trying to arrest mining efforts, or manifesting in the street to trying to prevent companies and governments from doing certain ways of business. So it's better than extract value, but it's really not able to generate new possibilities for us, because it's like we are going at full speed towards destruction, and we're just reducing the acceleration. We're not really changing direction. And the same for do good, which is what I would invite you to hold in mind, that is most of the work being done within the transition movement context is do good work. It's about doing better for people, for places, for planet. But often it's still from a place of not really leaning on to what makes people and place unique. So it's a very generic response. And I'll give you my own example. When I went a few years ago to work in Southeast Asia, I went there full of idealism that, I'm going to help the Timorese people in East Timor to don't do the same mistakes we did in Europe. And I'm going to teach them how to do better. But I was not considering who are the Timorese people, what's the unique context they live in. So I was going there, and like most other consultants, foreign consultants are going there and just downloading ideas on the place and on people that are coming from other parts of the world. So doing good also creates a lot of problems. It's better than extract value and arrest disorder. So I argue, and that's what I'm trying to work with you here today, that moving ourselves up to thinking like the way life works, the way living systems function and work, is the best possible way we can go to really address the challenges we have today. Now we need to learn how to do that, how life works, and how we can be more attuned and harmonized with the way life works instead of working against it, right? Or trying to control or manage it. So we are basically talking about a fundamental shift is from seeing, things working in a mechanical, linear way to really seeing things as wholes, as living wholes. Our planet is a living whole, nested in a solar system that is nested in a galaxy. We are nested inside the planet in different regions. So we need to start to see this in a totally different way, and that requires a different way of thinking. So, we need doing systemic change and doing change, transformational change in the world today requires that we examine our way of thinking. So we need to go upstream. We need to be more paying attention to how we think and to see if we are thinking in the right way about the challenges we have. Otherwise, we're just talking and we're just repeating solutions that end up generating the results that are similar or that nobody wants. And just to give you an example of this thing of working with wholes or with parts and how much we get in trouble and in this kind of, let me show you this kind of tunnel vision is just, for instance, how people are working in Portugal with, for instance, the rivers and energy and, erosion of the coastline in Portugal, because one of the ways Portuguese governments have been trying to find a path towards renewable energies and being not dependent on fossil fuel energies is hydraulic sources of energy, right? So dams, building dams in the rivers all around the country. And they continue to do that. What happens when you build a dam is you're sourcing your energy better, that's true, but you're also having all sorts of other consequences because you're not seeing the river, we're not seeing the river as a whole system. So we separate, we reduce a part of the flow of water to source our energy, but by doing so, we limit the capacity of the river to take residual sand and rocks downstream up until the coast, and therefore continuing an ongoing process of balancing the degradation of the coastline that the ocean makes by ongoingly depositing sand and rocks in the coast. So by doing dams, we prevent that process. So we create a solution that generates all sorts of other problems. So we need to shift the way we're thinking about this. And the fundamental aspect is stop working from a fragmented way and work with living wholes. And I want to go and talk a bit about living wholes because that requires us to think in a whole different way, not the analytic way we are thinking. So let me ask you, what face do you see here? What are you seeing in this picture? Just open the mic and tell me very fast, just briefly. What are you seeing?
A girl.
A
A
witch.
girl. Thanks, Silvana. What, Grant?
A witch.
A witch. Anyone else see something different?
I can see one or the other, the young girl or the witch.
Okay, so there's two faces actually, right? There's the young lady looking to the left, and there's the old lady with the mouth here and the chin. Where is the neck of the young lady? It's the chin of the old lady. So it's interesting that, at the first glance, we just see one of them. As soon as we see the other, then we can't stop seeing it anymore. It's going to be easier for us to see. But it's hard to see both at the same time. It requires some sort of practice. It's not really easy to see the two at the same time. You are shifting from one to the other. And that's what we need to start to be working on in, for instance, balancing left and right side of the brain, because our left side of the brain is focused on micromanagement, on, seeing things in categories and looking at things in detail. And our right side of the brain is used to see things as wholes, moving, dynamic, in relationship. And that's the part we need to develop in order to be able to see living wholes in a relationship. So first thing in this work that's really important is to turn the camera to us and start to do something that we call self-observation. Be able to look at ourselves as regularly as possible so that we are able to catch ourselves when we are thinking, so that we are able to question, am I thinking in the right way about this situation? What other ways could I be thinking about it? How do I need to bring myself into this situation? So self-observing is fundamental to any work of change one needs to be doing, right? So that we are able to see every time we are looking at the world as a machine, that we are able to bring to living systems perspective. We're not seeing things fragmented, but nested and wholes. We are not downloading generic solutions. We are actually paying attention to what's unique in each context, what's unique in each person, and working from that. And this is really a fundamental shift And I just wanted to give you a sense of what are the shifts that we need to be working on when we are trying to move from this way of seeing the world and life as parts and fragmented and mechanic to seeing it alive and nested in living wholes. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail more, but to just give you this sense of the several different shifts we need to be working on. So let me give you an example of how this way of thinking works in practice. Can you open the mic and tell me very briefly, if you were going to describe swimming, what would you say? What are all the things you know about swimming? And let's do that kind of popcorn time. So everybody can open the mic and just say one or two words. What comes up to mind when you think about swimming?
Floating.
Floating.
Moving arms and legs.
Moving
Being
arms
in
and
water.
legs.
Being in
Being in
water.
water.
Pulling yourself through the water.
Pulling yourself through the water.
Propulsion through water.
Propulsion through water. Thanks, Galen. Nice to hear you.
Splashing.
Splashing. So you can see already that just one very basic thing, swimming, how many different concepts, words, ideas come into place when we start to, think about it. But we're thinking about it in analytical terms, right? We're just thinking about, words to describe a thing. Now, do one thing. Close your eyes for a few seconds, for half a minute, and swim. Really swim. Close your eyes and see yourself, experience yourself swimming. How different was that from the first experience of talking about swimming? Would love to hear just a couple of voices, just very briefly. How different was that, and what kind of effect it had on you? From the first, just describing swimming, to this, being really swimming, being immersed in a context, even if it's inside of you, but you were there somehow. How was it?
Multisensorial.
Multisensorial.
Was
So
more
there was,
kinesthetic, like the pleasure of being in the water.
yeah. So you could have a sense, a felt experience of being in the water. But that's interesting, right? So there's a shift from you and the object of what you're talking about as something separate, that you talk about it and you describe it, you analyze it, to you being there in it, part of it, experiencing, fully immersed, multisensorial, as Grant was saying, immersed in the place all at once. That is not you or the place, you are part of the place and you are there swimming and having the full experience. So when we talk about working with wholes instead of parts, we're talking about, are we able to hold people, hold other living wholes like communities, places, the same way we were doing now with swimming, instead of analyzing it, right? Because what we are doing now is analyzing and saying, oh, we have problem with water, we have problem with unemployment, we have problem with inequality between women and men, and we go about working these different issues, but are we really seeing the place, the community, the people as wholes, moving and working with their own unique characteristics? So this requires a different shift in mind. So this first aspect, having this kind of sense of what we call monadic thinking, having a sense of that everything starts with wholes, with this unity, that we can go from ourselves with ourselves nested and our different organs nested in us. We are nested in families, that are nested in communities, that are nested in places, that are nested in bioregions, that are nested in continents and in the planet as a whole. So this is the starting point. And when we are working with transition initiatives, we need to be working on each individual wholeness, sense of wholeness, but also the group sense of wholeness. We need to be able to work with that, what it means to be a whole group and not just a sum of parts, that we are able to work together towards something common, towards a shared purpose, right? So we need to be able to start to bring two forces in, one more. So we move from monadic thinking to dyadic thinking, which is about complementarity, which is very relevant in the world that is so more and more focused on polarity and opposing forces, having a sense of that everything that exists, it's part of something larger and that complement each other offers a new insight. Then that is not the problem that we are against each other, is that just we are looking at one level, that it's me and you on this level here. But if we hold that we are nested in something larger, whether it's a family, a transition group, or a community or a place, then there's always a potential for complementarity, and that's important to hold. But there's not only complementarity I want to talk to you about. There's another one that's really important for the work with living systems, and that's it. That's the complementarity between existence and essence of things, or energies. And we are very used to focus on just working on existence, working on, for instance, I have a house and I have to work on my house. I have to work on the things I have to manage in my house so my house is functional. Oh, there's the sink is broken, I need to fix it. Oh, there's a door that's broken, I need to fix it. So that we are able to live in my house, me and my family, in a functional way. But that's a very tiring, that's a very basic way to look at house, because you're just looking at the physical aspect of it. But house has another dimension when we bring in home, when we bring the essence of what it means to be a family in a shelter, in a certain place, right? What happens when we bring home? And we are thinking, like, we start to have a conversation around what is home for us and how to work with this house in a way that is a home where our family can prosper and have a meaningful life. The whole game changes, right? We start to pay attention to different things. And we can do that with a house, we can do that with a place, we can do that with a person. We can look at the person and just be focusing on what the person is doing, and we just focus on the visible aspect. But if we start to hold in mind, who is this person really? What is our essence? Then we open a space beyond our, preferences of people. We open a space to really get in contact with how much that person can be complementary to us and bring their unique contributions, instead of getting stuck on preferences or disagreements because the person is not doing what I expect from her. So there's something about being able to hold this essence and existence. This, we call it also potential, the possibility of something to become better in him or herself or the place and not just working on existence. So for instance, when we bring complementarity to place, we're not just thinking about what's wrong with place, which puts us looking at the past and problems. We're looking at what that place could become. What could that place become if we understand better its essence, and we can see what it's calling into being? What is it being called into being from what makes it unique? Which takes us away from generic best practices, good practices kind of thinking, because then we need to really lean on the places and on the community, right? Okay, we're almost there. I have to introduce you the third force so that then we can do an exercise, okay? So wholeness, working towards wholeness in ourselves, working towards wholeness in groups, working toward the wholeness of place, to have it integrity, and then work towards complementarity and being able to hold simultaneously existence and potential and essence, which are things that are not visible. We can't see them because they are not material, right? They are just in the field of possibilities, of thinking, of energies. All right, so, you can see this wholeness also in humans, right? We were talking a while ago about rational, and then separating the rational from the intuitive, the emotional, the somatic, and actually wholeness is all these things working together towards the same goal as an organism. And, in work, we can say we've been tackling a huge debate for years about inner transition, outer transition. They are two parts of a whole. They are not two separate things. They are two aspects of a whole. And if we are able to integrate them, we are going to have a transition movement that is much more wholesome and much less fragmented. So we need to be constantly working on that. And also in ourselves, right? What is my inner work as I'm doing outer work? What is it that I need to be coalescing inside of me and balancing and harmonizing that I'm better able to do the work in the outer world? All right, so third force is we call dynamism. It's like, you know, the life would be very, very boring if it would just be wholes. Like, you know, it would be everything is part of everything. There's no dynamics. There's no this complementarity and polarization. Things would get very easily boring. So it's like life needed this drama, these dramatic forces of activating and restraining, you know, a force, an activating force and a receptive force, or a masculine and feminine energies, this dualities, these complementary forces, they are needed for a certain tensions to be able to, and drama to be able to happen. But if we would just be stuck in that, we would just be stuck in this, what we are now seeing with polarization, right? It feels like we can't move because you're either in favor or against. It's a very stuck place. But life is never stuck. Life is always in movement. So there's a third force that we are blind, that is this creative force that is bringing always new possibilities to life. And we can become masters of this. We call this law of three, and we can all work with this. And actually, we are constantly working with. The problem is we often compromise instead of working towards reconciling, activating, and restraining forces. Because again, we see restraining forces as bad. If there's someone in the group that is saying, this can't be done, this is bad, or this, we immediately say, oh, this person is, you know, is not good, is arresting, is restraining us, we need to follow this activating force. But actually, that voice is probably saying something that is relevant to the system. So can we start to hold activating and restraining forces in equal measure? So that then we are able to hold those present in us in a way that we can see if there's any reconciling force that we can bring in ourselves and in our work with others. All right, so this is dynamism. And I want to do an exercise with you. So you're creating an energy field for reconciliation. Okay, I'm not going to touch this now, and I'm going to invite us to do an exercise, okay? In breakouts, so in breakouts in trios, probably. I think we are enough to do trios. So in each group, I ask, check if one person has a very concrete group or entity, organization, community that you are working with, that you are currently part of and engaged in, you know, doing some sort of work to evolve that entity. Either that is your, you know, local transition group, or a concrete effort that you are doing with a concrete group of people. Just holds that context concretely in mind in a lively way, like you were talking, like the swimming exercise. And the others are just going to act as a resource, one as a resource and the other as a witness. So the resource is just asking questions to help the person bring this reflection alive, and the witness is just observing. And so the resource is helping the person bring the whole into mind and describe it very briefly, and then ask, what is the whole currently working on in relation to wholeness? How is that group, you know, working on their own sense of wholeness? Are they, you know, involving everyone? Everyone is having a role. Is it clear the purpose that whole has in terms of what they're trying to work on? How are they able to have effect and be effective in the work they are doing? If they are thinking from if you are holding the monadic thinking, the wholeness part in mind. And then, so you explore these questions for wholeness, and then you also explore them for complementarity, for the same group, and for the dynamism. the triadic thinking. And you see like how that group is working on all of those, and what is lacking, and what is the consequences of that. And let's have a conversation very lightly. Try not to go in very detail about each of these things. The importance is that you go through all the different ways of thinking, the one term, wholeness, two terms, complementarity, and three terms, the dynamism, and apply it to that group, to that concrete situation, and see what insights that generates. And we'll have very brief time, 15 minutes, and then we'll come back to have a conversation. So you might want to take a screenshot of this just to help you have the conversation, and for the resource to guide the person in the talk, for the person to be reflecting on the questions. Is it clear? Kind of. So hold in mind a concrete or entity. Is it a group of people or an organization, a community, or trying to evolve? And go through how are we doing with wholeness? Are we have a sense of whole? Are we kind of clear about what is the larger purpose we are working on? What are we doing to work towards that, or what are we not working on? And then go do the same for complementarity and for dynamism, okay? Very lightly, don't take too much time on each of these. Welcome back, everyone. I'm sure you probably struggled with some, getting some in practice, some of these ways of thinking, monadic, dyadic, and triadic, or 1, 2, and 3 terms. Yeah, so I would love to have a conversation and see how was the conversation? Did it open some insights before we go to the difficulties? But perhaps just to check with that, like did the reflection open up some insights, some different ways of seeing the situation that you were not expecting, or that opened up some new avenues of exploration for you? How was it?
For me, it was a bit difficult because I didn't, I was in a group of 2 with Silvana, not 3. And I didn't understand at first the reality that she was offering for me to help her with. So, but I don't think there was a lot of insights or different ways of seeing.
Okay.
I think it was a very short time, but in the meantime, between English and Spanish, we could understand each other, and and I think we both got to the same conclusion about the difficulties that emerged on her group, and that I acknowledged. So it was a problem with communication, I think, because sometimes, and all that you said, Nuno, in the first part of the session, they were all words and communication, but assertive words. And if the words are not the correct ones, or put it in a certain way, or in a certain kind of acknowledgement speech, it doesn't get to the body. It just gets to the mind. And it's very hard for a rational being like me, for instance, to open up to different kinds of ways when there is only the mind thinking, what does this mean? What can I do to help her? What can I say? What are the questions? What are the right answers? And it's too short to feel something in the body, and that was my main difficulty.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Mariana, because I think it's not what you brought in is all over the place. It's not just you, it's in us, it's in our systems. So it's a very important voice to hear out. And this embodied experience is really relevant. I would love to hear a couple of other voices, and then I hope I'll share some things that hopefully will also help a bit land better. but take also some of the things I said in the first part of the conversation as pointers for further exploration, because I thought instead I wanted to just open up a bit some things that hopefully would generate some curiosity for you to explore, more than to get a sense of what is it that we're talking in concrete terms, because some of these things have very significant implications way beyond what we could explore in the time we have here. But I would love to hear others. How was it for others? Gary.
Something? I was just granted me, and we talked about several projects that we're associated with. One of his was a permaculture-based hotel in southern Portugal, and that we talk about a residential holiday community in Portugal and a green living day in England. And it seemed one of the things that was in common was that the issue of these projects joining more widely, being seen more widely in the community, doing more than just being in their own silo. To that. And the essence that we said went across them all was the difference between people being in their own separate siloed, working on their own separate projects, and being actively and visibly and understandably part of a larger whole that's working on something similar, and trying to form a still larger whole as the essence of it. And that was the core issue. Grant, does that, how do you see it?
That was well summed up, Gary. I would add one thing, and it was just a simple question of yours made me think about the concept of reciprocality. So it's the giving, and then because you give, you create that sort of love ripple and you get given back. And whether that's within the community you're setting up or without, seeing neighbors or seeing next systems as equal partners and collaborating, and there's this idea of reciprocality that made me think in a new way about the project I'm busy with. So thank you for that.
Great.
Thanks for that, because you brought something that I think is at the heart and was something that I was holding in mind. I was hoping to come out of this, which is like that all this in a way is fractal, right? So we are working on being, if you think in retrospect in our lives, we are always trying to work towards wholeness, that we kind of feel complete. And what it's called, I was just talking with Anaí, this is hard word for many languages. For instance, in Latin languages, there's no good one word that brings everything together of what the word wholeness and whole in English mean. Because when you're talking about whole, is much more than just, that you are present or that you are, it's how you are integrating the different aspects of yourself. So for instance, Mariana was saying, I'm a very rational person. So the question of wholeness is like, probably there's in different situations, Mariana, like all of us, is trying to find the right harmony between my thinking self, my being, my state of being, my energy, and what I'm doing, my doing what I have to be doing. And so I wanted to share with you this because this is important. This is something that we're working individually. But then when we're working in a group like a transition initiative, we need to also be working towards that actually there's a sense in which part of the work of a transition initiative is not to the outside, but is to keep some level of wholeness that enables the group to work as a group and not as a sum of different parts, because that's one of the problems for conflicts, right? If we have a sum of different parts trying to work together, that's a field, a space with propensity for a lot of conflicts that are hardly going to be reconciled. They're going to be breaking the group apart because the group was never a whole and will never going to be a whole. So working towards wholeness, and then we see the same, which was what Gary was pointing towards, that the same happens with place. How often are we working from a fragmented place of us against them, the politicians, the private sector, and these are all enemies, and suddenly we are all disconnected. But the place either that is a valley or is an estuary or any other kind of place where we all live. We are all part of that place together. So we can work towards that place being more in a state of wholeness or more fragmented, depending on how we engage with the place and with each other, right? So it's the same, is another level, but the same kind of work: individual, group, and then systemic, right? So hold those three lines in mind, and let me show you a couple of things and a case study, and then we have a final conversation together. So everyone can see the slide? So you were just talking, right? We can also think that a human has these three forces in him. So you know, when we see three orders, 2 orders and 3 orders, or 3 terms system, we have each person, each living system is whole. Each living system has complementarity, has this experience, this existential manifestation, but there's also an inner core, an essence. And that's all living beings have that, whether those are people, animals, other living entities, also including places, organizations, collectives. And all of us have also three forces. So we have inside of us activating, restraining force, and the kind of reconciling, this third force. So we can look at it from this aspect of 3 dimensions of humans, right? So we have the doing self, the being self, and the will self, or the mind. What is it that is our purpose in life? What is it that is sourcing our will to act in the world, to do things? And what we need to be whole is to bring all these things in harmony, in ourselves and also in a group when we are working in a group. So if you see a transition initiative that is too much focused on functioning, and it's not taking care of the being state, which usually it's something that the inner transition people take care of a lot and pay attention, if this is out of balance, there's going to be a lot of conflict. And you know that, right? People start doing things and immediately problems start to show up. And this, I would contest, is mostly because we are not working simultaneously with being and with the will, because there's also the will aspect of this. And the will is an important thing. If we consider that we are talking about a life that is on a context of society that is very fragmented and individualistic, we can very easily fall in the trap of the will being seen as the wish of the individual. But I have a premise I want you to hold in mind. That is that all human beings are more fulfilled and have meaningful lives when they are holding in mind and serving a purpose that is larger than themselves. It's about something that is not just about me. Either it's my family, it's my community, it's the place I live. So it's where we are really vibrating and having a very meaningful life sense when we are able to do that. If we're just focusing on ourselves, that we don't have the same level of energy. So we are meant to be in that kind of role because life is nested, right? So that's the other thing I wanted to show you. That is, I wanted to, this one. Life is nested. And so, So when we are thinking about a transition initiative or a project, we usually focus a lot on the project, but the focus of our attention should be the place. What we call here the proximate whole, the place where the project happens, because it's the place that we are trying to evolve. The project is an instrument for that. So we need to be able to hold three levels of nestedness. What is the proximate whole we are working on? Is it the neighborhood? Is it the city? Is it a valley? Is it the river? Is it a watershed? What is this life shed we are trying to evolve? And where is it nested? What is the greater whole is nested? So that then we can have conversations about these relationships through things like what makes this place unique and what could be its unique contribution to the greater whole, so that our project is aligned with that and working towards that, and finding other projects and other groups of people in our place, in our proximate whole, with whom we can partner, because this proximate whole is an all in itself and should be working towards wholeness. So I want to give you a practical example. so we can land this and not be in the conceptual thing, and help Marianne and all of us to land in, you know, embodied, some sort of sense that this can be an embodied work, right? So I'm going to talk to you about a case my colleagues at Regenesis worked with, that is in the birthplace for Anaí, Viña del Mar, in the Pacific coast of Chile. You can see on the left side there where Viña del Mar is. And it's a very touristical place. It's a wonderful, beautiful place with a nice bay in front of the Pacific Ocean. So people have been living quite close to the sea for a long time. And up until the second half of the last century, this place was able to sustain this crazy tourism push, and was able to keep itself some sort of harmony in terms of its own identity and you know, essence, and be in relationship with the visitors in a way that was not really degrading the life and the essence of the place. But this has changed a lot in the last few years. And so there's this part of the city there called Las Salinas that was owned by this large corporation from the South America that has several different businesses, including businesses with fossil fuels. And they use this place as you know, a deposit for fuel to supply different parts of the city for several years. And this is a plot, and you can see there, right? It's a plot right in front of the beach, beautiful place on one of the extremities of the city. And you know, the owner of the company wanted to leave some sort of legacy, because he had some sort of care for this city. Probably, I don't know if he was born there also, but he had a care for the place. So he wanted to do something meaningful for this plot of land, and he started immediately have this idea to clean these tanks and build these residential high rises for the city, so more people could come. In his own mind, more tourism, more value to the city. So for him, it was all a great business and doing good for the city, right? But he was caught in the paradigm of do good, because he was just thinking, what is it that he could do best for the city? But you know, the city was at this stage. This was quite recently. So the city in the last 3 decades has been suffering a huge pressure of tourism, growth, traffic, pollution, you know, increasing life costs. It's very hard to rent houses in the central parts of the town. So it's become harder and harder for local people to live there, to the point where when this guy and this company brought this project to the table, there was at least 18 community groups that said, we are against this. We don't want this. This is terrible. This is not what the city needs. And so, you know, what would be the habitual way for these big developers to do this work is, you know, I'm going to push it, and I'm going to, you know, start to make this, spend a lot of money on advertising campaigns to convince people that this is the best for the city, and would start to engage with local politicians to, you know, bribe them or convince them of the value of this project, because there's money to be made and all sorts of different things. But it would probably also involve a lot of legal battles throughout several years with these local groups. So what they did was, the promoter, the developer, invited Regenesis Group to come in and help, because they heard Regenesis Group work differently. And what the Regenesis Group did was, they brought these living systems lenses, and they said, well, we actually first need to change the way you are looking at place. We need to start, you need to see yourself as part of the place and not as someone from outside doing something for the place. Are you willing to do that? And the promoter, the developer, said yes. So they engage in a process we call story of place, which is a methodology about understanding the place really deeply throughout history, not only from a human perspective, but also, you know, geology, biology, different aspects of the place, so that we understand better who this place is. We ask the question, who is this place? Who has it been throughout time? So that we can start to see patterns and see what needs to change in terms of patterns that can generate more vitality, viability for the place and its people. So the story of place is a process that involves listening to local people, besides doing research, and engaging with people in a journey of understanding better the place. And this suddenly start to change the energy, because suddenly was the developer was together with these groups that were against, and different stakeholders in the city discussing and trying to understand together who is this city and who does it want to, what is his next trajectory of evolution that generates more vitality and viability for everyone, not just for the tourists, but for the people who live here, for the ecosystem that supports life. So they see the place as a whole, nested in the larger region, and they see these different groups nested there. Now, what this conversation enables is that, enables people to see themselves part of the place as the larger whole they are part of, and start to work as being contributors towards the wholeness of place. That we don't have a place where everybody's fighting with everybody. There's different agencies, different purposes and directions, but that actually you're coalescing towards a shared sense of direction that enables everyone to take their own role and make their own contributions without needing anyone else to be in control and management mode. So this changes the energy of the place. Suddenly they start working together, they start to see possibilities, and they start to design, they start to understand the place, as you can see here, and see what the different natural dynamics there that any intervention needs to be supporting. And they find this like 6 axes of work they needed to be holding in mind when doing the project. And then they did a new proposal, a design for the neighborhoods. Actually, this is the first neighborhood that had the maximum certification of LEED, which is the most sustainable certification for construction that exists now. They got the best certification for the neighborhoods master plan, and it's the first one in South America, and I think probably one of the first ones in the world that got this certification. And they are just starting now the moment of instead of starting with the buildings, they start with just taking care of the land and bringing the land back to its ability to have the processes between the sea and the mainland working, so that then they build buildings on top of it. You can search this online. It's starting now, the construction process, so we don't know how successful or not it's going to be, but we can already say from the process that it changed dramatically the way energies were being worked there, the way people were working together, and what they were able to work towards together. And so I want to stop now and just check, what kind of questions, holding in mind, we tackled so many things, this issue of conflicts and place and how to work for change, because what I'm arguing here also is that besides working with wholeness for people, for groups, we also need to be working with wholeness with places. So we need to be, I think one of the major shifts that transition movement could be doing now is this becoming better at working with place, because place is the next living whole that can help apparently opposing forces to coalesce and work together if we are able to create the right environment for that work to take place. If we continue to work with us and them in this fragmented way that we fragment more the places, and we are not really working towards building wholeness. And that's one of the reasons why we have ecosystems degraded, right? We work separately and we work on issues. We work on water quality or energy, like the case I was telling about the rivers in Portugal. And that's a major issue. So I just wanted to open now and hear out what's this waking up for everyone in relationship to the work that you are doing with your transition initiative or with the transition movement at large.
I've got one. Well, is it one? Perhaps it's a whole. It's a whole. It's a complex whole, which is one part of it is kind of greenwashing. So is the way that big companies can attach themselves to beautiful ideas, but not really mean it. And so I could really imagine something like you're describing, kind of, as the first time it happens, as absolutely groundbreaking as you've told it, but then it winning some prizes and other people going, oh, we'll do that, but they won't really. They'll do something that looks a little bit like it. And I guess underneath that, for me, is a kind of real deep skepticism about the ability of people who have power in the current system to meaningfully engage with things which diminish their power and also diminish their ability to get a return on their investment. And that's one of the kind of big, you know, when you say, oh, we're fragmented and we don't work together, we don't work with power holders, I hear that. And I'm also aware that I don't hear you talking about that power differential, and the way that it can really, really, really be exploited, and how those with power really, really want to hang on to it. So sorry, it's a bit messy, but
no, but
I'm
you're touching on very important points, and there's no right answer for them. What I would argue is, you know, we can't control when a person changes. What we can control, and that's something important, I think, for all of us, right? We don't control the circumstances we find ourselves in. We have only control for how we can respond to it. Now, one of the problems we have is most of the time, all of us are either in automatic modes, which means a lot of time we are reacting to things, or we are in this ego mode of just focusing on what we want. And for people who benefited tremendously from the narrative of the dominant narrative, it's hard to question that because you've been successful at it, right? So it takes more than just putting it out in their faces, you are going to be, you're a bad person or you're this, that, because that's going to separate even more. So what I'm saying is, and it's partly I'm sourced by, you know, Paulo Freire and the idea that is those who are in an oppressed situation that need to do something different, because those who are in as oppressors, they have too many you know, incentives to continue. But you never know when someone changes. And I told you and Anna a story that I will tell you very briefly. A colleague of mine from Regenesis was working with a big developer in the States, one of these that builds the biggest, you know, development neighborhoods in all the country. And they were working for 6 months. And the guy was not really getting this work of living systems. And it was like really not there. So it was a bit of frustration. But one day he goes to the meeting, and before he drops his kids in the school, he has 2 kids. And as he's heading to the school to drop them, he passes one of the places that's going to be his next spot for development. And he tells the kids, oh, this is the next place Papa is going to build. And one of the kids tells, oh, Papa, so this is the next place you are going to destroy. And that was it for him. He dropped the kids in school, and he really suddenly realized, oh, shit, I get it. And he got to the meeting, and after 6 months, he told my colleagues, okay, guys, now I'm ready to work. Let's do it. And they started chasing a whole new set of possibilities that were not there before. So I think sometimes it takes time to build relationships and needs a lot of care for what you're saying, Eva, that people will try to, you know, and not necessarily in a bad intention. It's the same like with sustainability and regeneration. Like we all do that. I see many people not with bad intention, but starting to put regeneration in their job profile, like they understand what it is, because we are processing the concept with the same mindset we have. But what we are saying, we need a different way of thinking. So I can't be bad with people saying, oh, you're stupid, you don't understand. It's just, I need to be patient that they will eventually get it, you know. Mariana.
I'm sorry, I think I'm I'm just too much, but I have something I wanted to say, that I'm always talking about this case to a lot of people that I know of. We started with the municipality here, some kind of work in our group, and we have a heritage from some of our old fellow citizens that went to these kind of meetings with the municipality. They were just too much fire. Do you know those guys that we want this, we want that? Okay. So the first meeting that we had, one of the persons that was in the ancient group started to do, because you do this to the river and you do that and you do this and this destroys the whole ecosystem and you're da 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 da. And she was just like, yes, killing everybody on the other side of the table. And then I just, that was just horrifying for me as well. And I put my hand on her hand and I said, okay, let's calm down. And we just breathed in and we started to talk about something else. We started to talk about the river from the perspective of the river and from the perspective of the citizens that in ancient times, so their parents and their grandparents, they were fishing and they were swimming on the waters that were not polluted. And suddenly the other guys on the other side of the table, they were children from people who swam on the river and who fished on the river. And so they started to engage with our conversation. And on the end of that meeting, they were almost joking around with us and telling jokes, and they were much more lighter, because we were not just with a lot of guns trying to finish them all, because they are people of the land. And when we started to talk about the land, everything changed. And for me, that was a very important lesson, because the people on the other side of the table were really local people, and they had the same kind of vision that we had. And that was what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Mariana. Thanks so much. And that touches the heart of what I've been trying to invite you to explore. So that's great as a way to kind of come to a full circle, because what you did was shift the attention from us and them towards something larger that we all care about, and we can work together because we care about the river, you know. So that's a wonderful. Galen. And then we need to close because we're way beyond time a bit, but thank you so much everyone for staying a bit more, and we'll close after this. Galen.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Nuno, for this. I really appreciate this, and the ITC for putting this together. Miss you all. I wanted to bring in a little bit of nonviolent communication philosophy into the conversation. As much as the transcending the us versus them by finding the greater whole that we can integrate together under. There's another dynamic that plays into the same symptoms, and that's this thinking that we tend to have. Marshall Rosenberg of NVC teaches this beautifully. This thinking that we have where we tend to want to make judgments at people or at groups. We want to make moral judgments where we say, those are the evil guys, and that's an us versus them. We want to make psychological judgments. We want to say, there's the narcissist, there's the sociopath, and all of these things, maybe have a role to play in our sense making. But in terms of navigating our relationships, they can be very harmful. And so what Marshall says is that we need to make judgments, but we don't need to make judgments about people. We need to make judgments about behaviors and needs. Are behaviors meeting needs or not? And that's part of what I was hearing underneath what Mariana was sharing as well, is that people are starting to identify that, look, these are the needs, and these are the behaviors that aren't meeting these needs. How can we come together to change behaviors individually and collectively so that all the needs present are getting met? As opposed to, how do I identify the bad guys and stop them from being the bad guys?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think NVC is a fundamental methodology. I think is, if people are not having the will and the energy to work in something together, even a great methodology like NVC will not save the day, because you need to have some sort of higher purpose that people are called to work together. Because we can all say, humans are all equal, we should love all humans, but that's idealism. In practice, not everybody, it's hard to extend our capacity to care beyond a certain number of people, and beyond so having that nestedness is what I think that helps and is a force to have people coalesce. But then instruments like NVC make a lot of, make all the difference too, because what we're working on, and I think one of the things, my final thing is to say, this way of thinking in terms of one term, the wholeness, working towards wholeness, two terms of this complementarity instead of getting stuck on polarities, and then three terms of dynamism is important for us to have a sense to read the systems we are part of in ourselves and see where we need to build capacity, because working for transformation is about building capacity more than doing things. We have this idea that doing things is what's going to make a difference, but actually is building capacity by engaging in things together is where we're going to change the state of the systems we are part of. Is not doing more things, and we're doing too many things. Probably, I think we all felt in the COVID that actually slowing down and doing less felt like somehow spacious, and it was a part of me felt that. Oh, there's suddenly we slow down. There's so much things we can be doing that we were not doing before because we just didn't have the space. So anyway, please leave a comment how you are leaving the session and what shifted in you before we close. And if you want to open the mic and say something, I just want to also honor the time of everyone. Thank you so much for showing up. I hope we continue this conversation in the future, because there's so much we can, continue to evolve our capacity in the transition movement to do this change work that is the world is calling. So thank you everyone for your presence.
Thank you so much, Nuno. From everybody. And please fill in the feedback form, folks. It's really helpful for us to get some feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes. Nice to see you, darling.
Thank you.